The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
I'm having a real problem, and I'm kind of getting sick and tired of how these RNC analysis roundtables after the Republican National Convention have pundits, journalists, and also campaign strategists, clearly partisan people, sitting around the same table, acting like they all have kind of equal types of opinions. TV director Natan was talking to me about this, Lewis. What's your problem with it, Natan, exactly?
Well, the problem is multiple-fold, but the main one is that you have people who have a vested interest in one candidate winning, strategists for their party, sitting next to people who are much more neutral by any objective measure, people, political journalists who work for magazines and so on. And they all come off as having an objective analysis, and it's blatantly not true because the people that are working for campaigns are just not permitted to say certain things and to be as blunt and honest as they could be. So
yeah,
I just think
and the other thing
unfair.
also, Lewis, is that most people assume when they're watching whoever on TV talk about politics that there's some level of bias involved. But the problem is it's difficult for people who aren't following this stuff all the time to just watch and instantly know the different types of bias. And you see two people sitting next to each other. One might be a Republican strategist. The other is, somebody from Time magazine. And you hear them say two things, and they're not really the same type of thing.
Right. Well, we're always looking for that, right?
But a lot of people just see it and assume it's just
right.
people talking.
It's very rare that we see just complete objective analysis of any political topic. It seems there's almost always a spin. But,
I would argue total objectivity doesn't exist, but when you've got such vastly different types of people up there, there's got to be some better way to do this type of convention coverage. I don't know.
I don't know. That seems impossible. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. Everyone's gonna be biased somehow.
Here's something really odd. Liberal media, supposed liberal media, hard at work. You know Aaron Burnett from CNN? After the Ann Romney speech on the second, kind of the first night of the convention, I guess, what ended up being really the first night, they came back to her after the Ann Romney speech, and she was crying. I mean, literally, she was just so taken with the speech that she was crying on TV, which is, it's fine if she's crying. The thing is, if they were tears of desperation, I would understand. But she was crying because she found the speech so compelling. I'll play this clip shows two things here. The first part is video only, where you'll see that Wolf Blitzer is talking and Aaron Burnett is crying. She's just so touched by this Ann Romney speech, which was just riddled with misleading statements and lies and just nonsense. And it made her cry, not because it was so inaccurate, but because she found it touching. And then afterwards saying, yeah, I did shed a tear. I really don't like this. This is after the speech, and there it is, and she's very shaken up.
For Ann Romney, what an exciting moment for her family, certainly for Mitt Romney and all these Republicans who are here.
Aaron Burnett just crying. She's crying because of the Ann Romney speech, one of the most ridiculous speeches.
Getting ready to speak right now.
Okay, and then we actually come back and she talks about her crying.
Along with my CNN colleague Aaron Burnett, we heard some powerful speeches in the past hour.
We certainly did. Obviously, Mitt Romney officially clinching the Republican presidential nomination today in the roll call, and this evening he made a surprise appearance here in the convention hall to watch his wife, and her speech was just one of the many memorable moments. And I have to say this, Wolf, I think when he came out, there was something about it, her talking about his love for him. I had a tear in my eye. I think a lot of people did, just seeing the love story that it is.
Yeah, we saw that. Wolf Blitzer, I love the look on Wolf. Look at this freeze frame on Wolf Blitzer's face. This is Wolf Blitzer's reaction to Aaron Burnett crying. He's just having this total, he's just not reacting in any single way. He's dumbfounded by it. Scintillating analysis. The Ann Romney speech was just so incredible that Aaron Burnett started crying. What is going on? How can you see that speech and see the nonsense and spin? I mean, Ann Romney said this is not going to be a speech about politics or parties. And that's all it was about. That's the only thing the speech was about. I mean, it's like double speak.
Here's what I propose. You want complete objectivity as it relates to coverage of a convention or of a political speech. Don't have any commentary at all. Just play the speech. There you go.
That's called C-SPAN.
The C-SPAN, or not really the PBS coverage, but PBS at least did more uninterrupted coverage for sure.
C-SPAN always good if you need to get to sleep quickly.
There you go. Okay, the Paul Ryan speech last night. The Paul Ryan speech. What a bizarre speech, ladies and gentlemen. Literally, almost all opposite meanings. Just about everything Paul Ryan said in the speech yesterday, actually the reality was the opposite. I'll tell you a bunch of those things, but first, let's just give you a little, I don't want to play the whole speech, but let's just give you a sense of at least what his voice sounded like during the speech.
Fellow citizens, I am honored by the support of this convention for Vice President of the United States.
Okay, that's really all we need. I mean, you're not tuning in to see the speech. You could have seen the speech. The speech is online. Let me tell you about some of my reactions to the speech. First of all, I don't know if Paul Ryan has a dry mouth problem or if he was eating snacks during the speech, but it was one of the strangest deliveries I've seen in a convention speech in a while.
He was nervous.
Well, yeah, when
You think
you're
that's what it
nervous,
was?
that can happen.
Just nerves?
When you're nervous, that can happen.
Yeah, and it went away as the speech went on. He got a lot better.
I thought it got worse, to be honest.
No, I don't think that was the consensus opinion. That's not what I saw.
Well, as we know, the consensus is often wrong.
Especially when you're the consensus.
And David is always right.
Okay, let's get into the meat of it, though. His dry mouth is really not the concern. He talked about getting out of the jobs crisis and into prosperity, okay? And that's what the Republican Party would do. That's what Romney Ryan would do. Just look at the numbers dating back 50 years. Republicans do the opposite. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to liberal or conservative pundits. Just look at job creation numbers over the last 50 years, over the last 60 years, comparing when Democrats and Republicans are in the White House. You'll know that that's just not true. There's no evidence to back up what Paul Ryan is saying about jobs. He talked about Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney are going to get it done. Yeah, we'll be done with the job recovery. We'll be done with progress on basic rights. The whole thing is going to be done if it is Romney Ryan. That we can be sure of, Lewis.
It's great to say we're going to get things done. We're going to accomplish everything that needs to be accomplished. That's what you say. You say Obama's failed, and we're going to set things straight, and people love it. And
then he said Mitt Romney is going to be the man for a turnaround. Absolutely. Turn around the job creation, turn around the all-time high stock market, turn around America's recovering image around the world. Let's turn it all around with Mitt Romney. I actually agree with Paul Ryan. It would be a very big turnaround with Mitt Romney.
Accurate. The first accurate statement.
He talked about 23 million people would be struggling to find work. Yeah, and if it were up to Republicans, most of those also wouldn't have health care if it were up to Republicans right now.
Okay. I agree.
Oh. And he said, why would the next 4 years be different from the last 4? They probably wouldn't. Under Obama, stocks would continue to increase, jobs would continue to recover, more people would have health care. So maybe I am finding points of agreement with Paul Ryan. I don't know.
Yeah. But see, in his opinion, those 4 years were the worst this country has ever experienced since the Great Depression.
Then he got into Obamacare. He said the biggest waste of time, the biggest waste of all was time during the Obama administration. Yeah, like those 31 attempts by Republicans to repeal Obamacare.
But that was the only time they were actually trying to do anything. The rest of the time, it was just filibustering, stalling, delaying.
Obstructing, yeah. He still is going with this meme of Obamacare is less freedom in his speech. Come on, Paul. You tried repealing Obamacare 31 times. You went to the Supreme Court. They upheld it. More people are going to have health care. Move on. You're really starting to sound like a sore loser.
People should have the right to be uninsured and not covered in case things go horribly wrong.
And make health care way more expensive for other people.
When they eventually end up in the ER and it comes out of our pockets, yeah.
Exactly. He also said that college students need basically like a paradigm shift. He said college students just need a fundamental, to quote Newt Gingrich, some kind of fundamental realignment about what it is to graduate from college. Yeah, I guess they should start borrowing millions of dollars from their parents and start a small business, don't you think?
Well, he really has to try and stay in line with what Mitt Romney said on this issue, and that is guaranteeing every college graduate a job.
Exactly. If Mitt Romney is president.
Whether or not that job is in China or at McDonald's it remains to be seen.
Well, then, Paul, I find one thing. I find the whole college graduate reference to be completely pointless because the unemployment rate among college grads is way lower than the national average. It's less than 5%. So I don't see how that's going to get them anywhere.
He also started talking about merits. He said a challenger must stand on his own merits, and he said Mitt Romney does. What merits are those? Outsourcing jobs to China, flip-flopping countless times on every single issue, hiding your money in Europe. What merits exactly does Mitt Romney stand on?
Well, as far as we know, he's never cheated on his wife.
There you go. Okay, well, that's what he stands for, I guess. Bottom line, we always talk about people don't really vote for a vice presidential candidate, and I agree with that. If there's ever been a time to vote against a vice presidential candidate, it's Paul Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, but that's moot. I mean, we're talking about Mitt Romney here, and he's a joke.
Well, we'll talk about Romney after he gives his speech. Ryan gave his speech, so now we're talking about him.
All right. He's kind of just a footnote because it really didn't matter who Romney picked. I mean, right?
Well, it could have been far worse, but it wasn't really going to help him that much no matter what.
Right.
I agree with that. Let's check in with our correspondent in Tampa. Let's start with Luke Vargas. We talked to him just a few minutes ago. It's the last day of the Republican National Convention in Tampa. We're going to check in with Luke Vargas, our correspondent from Talk Radio News Service. So, Luke, now we've gotten a couple days of speeches. We had day one, which was kind of Monday and Tuesday condensed into one day. A little bit hectic, understandably. But then we also had Wednesday now with Paul Ryan and a number of other speakers, including Condoleezza Rice. How's it going, do you think, with the messaging overall that we're seeing from the Republican convention? I mean, is there continuity? Are we still having problems on messaging?
The problem is the same as it was when we talked about it yesterday. There was one quote that Paul Ryan said that just absolutely floored me and highlighted, the trouble that the Republican Party is having coordinating their messaging. And this line was, "If you're struggling in the Obama economy, you have not failed. The government has failed you." And to me, I just don't get this. I've heard chants in this arena. People are chanting, "We built it. I built it." And I'm wondering, so if you succeed in the economy, it is your success solely. But if you fail, it's the government's fault. So is the role of the government to guarantee success? Paul Ryan has been saying on the campaign trail, we're not about guaranteeing equal outcomes. We're about putting everybody at the start line in an equal place and then seeing how people finish. So to me, this is a great opportunity for the Obama campaign to come in here and note how much energy we're wasting and how much divisiveness we're fomenting when we have these competing slogans that people are chanting. Some people are chanting, "We built it." Some people are chanting, "The government built it." It's all of it. And I just can't believe that they put themselves in this kind of knot.
All right, so we'll see tonight whether Mitt Romney is able to, in some way, kind of tie this together, whether it continues to seem even more ad hoc and unorganized. What's going on there now in advance of the big Romney speech tonight?
Well, downstairs, and I'll pan over to show you here, they are installing a new wood platform for Mitt Romney to speak from, as if there wasn't enough of this sort of teak or wood or whatever it is down on the stage there. But they're giving him a new podium. They are restricting, it looks like they're also restricting the number of camera locations that the media can shoot from right up in front. They did this with McCain. They had these sort of steps that flowed down into the delegate floor. But when McCain spoke, they put up this sort of glass barrier, and they cut about in half the number of sort of shooting locations that you have for Romney. So,
and is this a security thing, or what's the point of this?
I can't really tell. There were some problems yesterday. I guess the fire marshals had to close down the delegate floor, and I walked by a number of the entrances to the delegate floor and was, hearing a lot of angry delegates yelling at the security people. And they had clearance to be on the floor, but they weren't allowed down. So it looks like tonight, judging by my estimation, there'll be maybe 100 fewer actual places for people to be on the floor, and perhaps the problem we had last night is going to be even worse.
All right, so we're going to check out the Romney speech. Of course, we'll be doing instant response, as we've been doing on the first night to Ann Romney's speech and last night to the Paul Ryan speech. Luke Vargas, Talk Radio News Service. Great job covering the RNC for us. Now, will we see you in Charlotte next week?
Yeah, we'll pick up where we leave off this week.
All right, sounds great. So Monday, Luke, we'll check in on your thoughts on the convention as a whole. We'll talk about the Romney speech and then preview the Democratic National Convention, which I predict is going to be far, far different, both in tone, substance, and just about in every other way, and probably weather as well.
Right. I think I'm excited for what's in store. It's going to be fun.
All right. Luke Vargas, Talk Radio News Service. We'll talk to you Monday in Charlotte.
Thanks, David.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. Every day I like to say hi to a new David Pakman Show member who is supporting the show. Of course, made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Liberal bias is everywhere. You find it in polls, statistics, facts of all kinds. Make sure you're educated about all the ways that facts are liberally biased. Check out liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day, Aurimas Kiseliovas. I hope I'm pronouncing that somewhat right. It seems to be, is that a Greek name, Natan, would you say?
What's the first name?
Aurimas, A-U-R-I-M-A-S.
I would say so.
Yeah, I think that we have at least of Greek origin, we could say.
Sounds good.
Even if our good friend Aurimas is not Greek personally.
Who knows?
Greek-born, I guess we would say.
Yeah. Hard to say.
It is very difficult.
Shoot us an email. Let us know.
Okay, let's move on. Let's check in now with Michael Schur, one of our other correspondents on the ground at the Republican National Convention in Tampa. What does he predict for this last day of speeches coming up tonight? Michael Schur is joining us. He's political correspondent for the Young Turks on Current TV. Michael, we saw the Paul Ryan speech last night, did an instant what you need to know video right after, within minutes of it being done, started seeing the articles come out from the left saying this is one of the most disingenuous speeches we've seen in a long time, and from some supposedly middle-of-the-road reporters as well. Then we saw the reaction from the right saying the left has got to stop whining. He wasn't lying about anything. What's the reaction there?
You know, the reaction here is that blame the left for everything. Blame the left for the media. I sat down next to a woman inside the hall yesterday during one of our breaks on Current, and I was sitting and talking with her, and she said, "Oh, you're from the media." I said, "Yes." "Are you part of the liberal media?" "Well, all of you are anyway." There's just that sort of course, this is one woman, but it's that kind of experience over and over here. So they blame us in the media for creating the notion that Paul Ryan is possibly lying. Not to mention today, John Cornyn, the senator from Texas, said that we need fact checkers. He asked, who's fact checking the fact checkers? And I couldn't believe it. This is where we are in America today. And then of course they would say, who's fact checking the guys who are fact checking the fact checkers, and would go on and on.
And it's just turtles all the way down, as we know with that theory about the universes, same type of thing. Let's talk about today. We've got Jeb Bush speaking, and of course eventually Mitt Romney is going to kind of close the whole thing off. What are you looking for? What might happen in these speeches?
That's what I've been trying to find out. I've been trying to find out, so much of this has been about people kicking the tires for 2016, letting the audience kick the tires for 2016, as I'm sure Jeb Bush is also going to want to do. And I've been trying to do a little reporting to find out if he is going to go to that third rail of national Republican parties, which is George W. Bush, and what he's going to do. And from what I'm able to gather and what my hunch is that he will mount a vigorous defense of his brother, and that's why he is here. Also because of former governor from Florida, a popular figure in this state, and actually in the middle of the Republican Party, despite his last name. So I think you're going to see a little bit of that from Jeb Bush today. That's what I would predict, is that he's going to defend his brother against the blame that everything that's wrong with America goes back to those 8 years.
And is he going to really make a case for Mitt Romney? Because Paul Ryan talked a lot about Barack Obama, really didn't mention much about Mitt Romney until the very end.
David, I wish I knew the answer to that. Everybody you think is going to go up and make a case for Paul Ryan, and none, for Mitt Romney, and none have, as you astutely pointed out. The other part of it is the best speech that was given today was given by Condoleezza Rice, a member of George W. Bush's, given at the convention, a member of George W. Bush's team, as you know, and that's not the era that this Republican Party needs to harken back to. And so I don't know what they're going to do. I would imagine he is going to talk about Mitt Romney. He didn't endorse him, you'll remember, in the primaries. Now, of course, he has endorsed him. All the Bush endorsements have been, I would say, tepid at best, though.
All right, and the Mitt Romney speech, what needs to happen? If you can make up any ideal scenario for the Mitt Romney speech, what's the best he could possibly get out of it?
The best that he could get out of it, can I be snarky and say that there's great news out of New Orleans and they rescue someone and all the news goes there? No, I think what he needs is he needs a lot of noise. He needs a lot of imagery, and I don't think his words are going to matter. I don't think his demeanor is going to matter. If I hear another person say he's got to look more presidential, what does that mean? He has to show that there is energy. And I think if they're able to get imagery that shows energy in this hall about him, about his candidacy, that's what's going to carry forward for the next 67 days. I don't think it's going to be anything he says tonight.
All right, Michael Schur, political correspondent for the Young Turks on Current TV. Will we see you in Charlotte next week?
We will see you in Charlotte, David.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so next week we will be coming to you from the DNC. Who's going to be there, Louis? Luke Vargas is going to be there. Michael Schur will, of course, be there. But also we'll be talking with, hopefully, Bill Scher is going to be there. Hopefully also Susie Sampson, Tea Partier Susie Sampson from the Tea Party Report. We're going to have a lot of people on the ground there, I think.
Sounds pretty good.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right, let's also now go in and talk to Dennis Campbell. It is Thursday. It's time for Worldview with Dennis Campbell. We spoke to him before the start of the show, and then after the break, you're not going to want to miss the anti-gay debate that we have coming up for you after the break. Dennis Campbell first, though. It is Thursday and time for Worldview with Dennis Campbell, who's editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine. Dennis, we've been covering the Republican National Convention all week, going up and down the different speeches and breaking everything down. One thing that has not really come up very much, it came up a little bit yesterday in Paul Ryan's speech referring to Mitt Romney as something of a churchgoer but of a different faith than Paul Ryan's, is the Mormon factor, which you've been writing about. So give us a sense of how do you think that as we go forward in the last few weeks before the election, Mitt Romney's religion may or will become a bigger part of the election?
Well, as I wrote about in Magic Underwear in the Situation Room, the newest ebook that I've put out, subtitle being Mormon Mitt's Weird Faith versus GOP Sexism, Lies, and Racism, the issue of his religion is something that has been totally obscured, and it's probably going to be framed this evening in his acceptance speech as something that has been very influential in his life, but you still will walk away with more questions than you will answers at the end of the speech. So the things that bother me, other than the certain idiosyncrasies that any religion is likely to have, are, if you remember back, and this is long before you were born, so you probably don't fully remember back, but during the 1960 presidential campaign, JFK was called into question and called to account because he was a Roman Catholic running for the presidency in a largely Protestant nation. And the big fear that was raised in the media and everywhere else was, would he be taking his orders from the Vatican, from the church in Rome? So when that issue comes up, literally 50 years ago, it generates a lot of discussion. Now, we have somebody in Mitt Romney who has played a very strong leadership role in the Mormon church. I don't care what religion Mitt is, I don't care particularly about Mormonism, but he was a lay bishop who became what's known as a stake president. And in the book, I go into the differences between the two because I actually talked to somebody who runs a website called Mormon Democrats, and it's actually a very nice man by the name of Matt Anselmo, and he gave me a lot of information, as did a lot of the other sources that I went to. This stake presidency meant he was in charge of all of the churches and congregations, and it was essentially a second full-time job for Mitt Romney. Aside from running Bain Capital, as a stake president, he was dedicating between 25 and 35 hours each and every week to working with these churches and with the parishioners. Now, if you've got a leadership person, where's the separation between church and state? That's the issue that keeps coming back to me. I don't care what religion you are, but when you have 55,000 missionaries out there across the globe that knock on doors trying to get people to come around to your way of thinking and join your church, where's the line? And when do we reach that point of crossing that line between church and state? Yes, there are checks and balances in the system, but I'm particularly worried about that aspect of this.
And what do you think as far as the effect that Mitt Romney's religion is going to have on that evangelical wing of the Republican Party? I mean, this was kind of talked about a lot when Mitt Romney was in the primary before it was clear that he would be the nominee, but it's really almost disappeared from mainstream media discussions, and we're hearing constantly about different polls and assessments of parts of the Republican Party, but I've not really heard much about what is the thought among the evangelical right about Mitt Romney being a Mormon.
Well, if you talk to evangelical Christians, particularly in the South, their view of the Mormon religion is that it is a cult. However, if you listen to Joe Scarborough just yesterday morning on the Today Show, he will tell you about how, as a Southern Christian, the Mormons were just the same as everybody else. I don't buy into that because he's definitely pushing an agenda, and in pushing that agenda, he clearly wants to see his candidate win. But all that aside, there is this fundamental level of distrust, and how can it be that in all of the previous presidential elections, you've had essentially Protestant candidates running, and the only Protestant running this time is Barack Obama, and yet you had Mike Huckabee on the television last night during his speech trying to bring back the Muslim question. So it's absolutely patently absurd that they're all going to just hold hands together and sing Kumbaya at the end of the evening tonight.
All right, so we're going to keep an eye on this religion question. Question for you, Dennis. Are you staying up really late there to watch all the stuff that's going on here?
Well, the last two nights I've given my body a bit of a break after the China trip and everything else, so I've gotten up a bit early, around about 4 or 5 in the morning, right after things have ended. I've been able to catch the tail end commentary, then go back and watch the speeches. There's a piece I put up on UK Progressive every morning, which is sort of a breakdown of what had happened the night before. Tonight, though, I will probably get up even much earlier, around about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, so I can indeed watch the speech live.
All right, there it is. Dennis Campbell, editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine. Thanks as always, Dennis. We'll talk next week. We'll also preview your upcoming paperback book. A lot of exciting stuff going on. We'll take a break and be back with plenty more after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Okay, joining me today are Wayne Besson, Executive Director of Truth Wins Out at truthwinsout.org, and also Dr. Michael Brown, host of the nationally syndicated daily talk program, The Line of Fire, and author of A Queer Thing Happened to America, as well as 20 other books. Now, I want to start, I think the best order to do this in, since the pitch I received included a criticism of Wayne Besson from Dr. Brown, would be first to go to Dr. Brown to have him explain to us exactly what is his criticism of Wayne Besson in terms of, as it relates to the Family Research Council shooting. So, Dr. Brown, let me go to you first.
Sure. Thanks, David. First, I'd just like to apologize to you and your viewers for cutting our last interview short. It was getting close to my own radio sound check time, and I didn't think your questions were serious, so that was my fault. It was unprofessional, and apologize for cutting that short. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to do that. As far as Wayne, I don't question his passion, his sincerity for the cause, but what concerns me is this, and in no way am I saying he's responsible for the shooting at FRC, God forbid, but what concerns me is this: when he writes that the people at FRC loathe homosexuals, or when after my group last year gives out 2,500 bottles of water saying Jesus loves you at a gay pride event here in Charlotte, that he writes about me, that I'm a pathological monster trying to incite violence against LGBT people, and many other things like that. I feel that unnecessarily inflames things. This past Sunday, protesters came to our church, my home church, where they hear me preach and teach, and they left after a little while saying, "You guys don't deserve a protest. You're too loving." And I'm having dinner with the main protester next week who said he met with absolutely perfect love. So I find this kind of rhetoric to be hurtful, destructive, and I think we can talk through our differences and have our profound differences without calling people pathological monsters who are trying to incite violence against the gay and lesbian community. I would die for the gay and lesbian community rather than incite violence.
Okay, Wayne, let me go to you. Feel free to respond to both Dr. Brown's claims about you, and if you want, defend why you think he is a pathological liar, whatever it is you said.
Not only is he a pathological monster, he's also a coward, because what he does is he incites people to violence, in my view. Just look at his rhetoric. He's got a talk show called The Line of Fire. His online magazine is The Voice of Revolution, and he runs the Fire School of Ministry, and the goal of that is to raise up a holy army of uncompromising, spirit-filled radicals who will shake an entire generation with the gospel of Jesus Christ by life or death. I think it's this combination of militaristic language and the demonizing of a minority that sparked my view of Mr. Brown. I also believe he comes across here as very kind and nice, but again, it's a fraud. What he's trying to do is come across as somebody reasonable and rational rather than the extremist that he is. What he's not telling you is that he went to Charlotte Pride, for example, with the intent of basically, as he calls, of ending gay rights. And that's what, and teaming up with Lou Engle, one of the most radical clerics in this nation, who went to Uganda to promote the anti-homosexuality bill, which could lead to the death of gay people. That's what he's not telling you. These are some of the, let me just read a couple of his comments about what he was doing at Charlotte Pride. He said he was there to, because of destructive goals of gay activism. He said, it stops here in Charlotte. Well, what does that mean? What do you intend to do, Mr. Brown? How are you going to stop the rights and the acceptance of gay people, which is now at 70% for people 18 to 30, without maybe some of your more militaristic values that you're whitewashing and sugarcoating here?
That's a fair question. Wayne, let's pause there, because otherwise we'll forget all the. Let's go one by one. Dr. Brown, are you okay with any kind of militaristic action to prevent the furthering of gay rights, as Wayne alleges?
God forbid. God forbid. It's so ironic that Wayne sits in front of a sign that says truth wins out, and either everything he said was misinformation, lies, misrepresentation. First, I never knew that Fire School of Ministry, calling something FIRE, Fellowship for International Revival and Evangelism, was militaristic. Secondly, Jesus requires us to take up the cross and follow him. In many parts of the world where our missionaries serve, their lives are threatened. Persecution against Christians is very real. That statement about our school mission came years before I ever even got engaged in homosexual activism. We have friends working in the Hindu world, Muslim world, dangerous communist places, and yes, their lives are sometimes threatened. Our whole message, if you actually read my books and listened, is put down the sword of violence and hatred. The Jesus revolution, as I say daily on my radio show, is one that overcomes hatred with love, one that overcomes deception with truth. That's why for years I said, Wayne, let's talk. Let's have public dialogue. That remains my posture. All you can say is that I'm lying, candy coating. The fact is, this is who we really are. So what do we do? And by the way, Lou Engle did not go to Uganda to promote the bill. That's also a misconception. What did Lou do? We prayed across the street from the Gay Pride event, about 500 people, and got on our knees and repented of our sins. And we got up and publicly apologized to the gay and lesbian community.
That's why
Wayne,
people
this is documented. This is all clearly seen. No one has ever heard me utter a word of hate or violence against the gay community. Sadly, you are inciting people with lies and misinformation about me. And if I was not a public figure, they would actually be libelous. They are that seriously wrong, Wayne. It's a fact.
Well, tell you what, pal, why don't you sue me? Because you are a liar, and I'm calling you a liar. And if you think you can win in court, take me. Let me tell you something. That's why people don't want to debate you, because you flat out don't tell the truth. You sit up there and you distort what you say, and you hope people don't do the fact checking. Well, we're going to do a little fact checking here. Here's a few more of the things you've said.
Do the fact check. Bring 20 bucks. Do the fact checking, Wayne.
Wonderful. Let me finish. I let you misinform people. You said that you went to the Exodus conference in 2007 to what you called fight a pitched attack from hell. You urged the people there to have a revolutionary mentality, and you told them life as it is not worth living, but the cause is worth dying for. And here's a few of the things that you said going into Charlotte Pride. Again, you said that the whole thing was about the destructive goals of gay activism. It stops here in Charlotte. You absolutely humiliated and insulted transgender people, calling them their inner tranny. You talked about them surgically mutilating themselves. You said that you were there because you don't think people should celebrate the pain of sex and brokenness, and you support ex-gay ministries. You said people were not whole and they were suffering from brokenness. And then you lied and tried to incite your followers in their intimidating red shirts, which is very rude of you to go to Pride with 500 people to intimidate people. And you said that, and you incited them and inflamed them by telling that we were trying to put conservative Christians in the closet. If that's not insightful language combined with your militaristic language, I don't know what is. Why don't you just be honest and tell the truth about what your goals are, rather than mixing militaristic language with demonizing a minority? And in particular, your insulting of transgender people is not only obnoxious and offensive, but I just think it's morally bereft of even any kind of decency whatsoever.
So, Dr. Brown, instead of, before you go into it, Are the quotes that Wayne has attributed to you, are those accurate quotes? Do you deny that you said those things?
Oh, they're 100% out of context and twisted. I'll give you
so hold on, but you did say those words.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to understand what was said. For example, inner tranny, I am quoting. Hey, Wayne, let me talk. The inner tranny quote that was from curriculum put out by GLSEN that help kids discover their inner tranny, and I quoted that to say that's outrageous to be done in elementary schools. That's a quote from gay activists. When I say life as it is worth living, the cause is worth dying for, I said that's how revolutionaries think. What's the pitched hell against the pitched attack from hell? It's the attack to destroy gay and lesbian people. That's what I'm talking about. Everything is taken and twisted. Wayne, I wrote a whole book called Revolution with chapter after chapter talking about the example of Jesus, talking about lay down your life for the lost, lay down your life. Every human being is broken. You're broken, I'm broken. That's why we need Jesus. That's why we preach him. And to show up at a gay pride event is making a very public, loud statement in the community. And it's also a family day and it's doing other things. We are there as believers to say we love you and we differ. We handed out 2,500 bottles of water that said, Jesus loves you. And we said not a single hateful word. We didn't stand and preach. We walked among the crowd, moms, dads, kids. You, Wayne, lie by calling them unstable thugs. You, Wayne, lie by saying I'm trying to incite people to violence. Every quote is either ripped out of context. Look, you can take the words of Jesus and rip them out of context. I'm quoting you in context. And sadly, rather than saying, Mike, I've overstated things, it's damaging and insightful to say what I said, to say you're a pathological monster trying to incite violence against gay and lesbian people. You can call me whatever you want, but to say that I'm trying to incite violence is a bold-faced lie. And that's why the folks in my church that hear me preach and teach, when gay protesters came, met them with the love of God. That's why the chief protester is having dinner with me with his partner next week so we can talk face to face. That's why I've repeatedly said, Wayne, let's have public debate and dialogue. Let's put everything on the table. Let's set it up where we can take 2 hours face to face in a neutral setting with neutral moderators, because I have nothing to hide. I've written 22 books. Quote one thing in context that is inflammatory or destructive. Everything is based with compassion for all people, but we have profound differences. The only thing that is in context is, yes, I believe the goals of gay activism are destructive to marriage and family and religious liberty. And yes, I do believe there are gay activists who want to silence us, which is why GLAAD put out a list of 36 commentators last year. I was one of them, telling the media, do not have these people on. That to me is trying to silence the other side. You don't like it when a group came against you and tried to get Fox to take you off. The same's been done to me and others.
Well, let's give Wayne a chance to respond here.
Sure thing.
Yeah, Michael, you're just dishonest, and you keep saying things are out of context, but they're not. In fact, they're very much in context. What you do is, again, cowardly because you incite people. You talk about nothing you said was damaging, but the way you promoted this thing was completely by scaring people and telling them that they want to stop gay activism is what you did, and then you went there and people said they were intimidated, that they weren't just drinking your water. When you surround, as you said you were going to do, 500 people who many of these people who have been to Pride have already been victims of religious persecution. They go there to feel good about themselves, and you go there with an enormous number of people in red shirts, like an uninvited, obnoxious house guest that won't leave, to intimidate and incite. And people said they felt intimidated. So I don't know what you're talking about. And you're selectively cutting out how people actually felt about your presence there. You weren't wanted. Yet that's your right to do that. But don't get me wrong. It's rude. It's obnoxious. It's unchristian.
Okay, gentlemen, I know that there's plenty much more to say, and I know it's unlikely we're going to be able to resolve all of these issues. I think it's great that you both appeared here. Comments were made indirectly. Now we have at least gotten both of you here. I'm glad to have a longer conversation when we have more time, and of course I would encourage both of you to have that longer conversation as well. We've been speaking with Dr. Michael Brown, also Wayne Besson from Truth Wins Out. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Incredible story from our friend Lou Giovanni over at The Examiner, and also from the We Survived Bush, You'll Survive Obama Facebook page. A happily married gay couple, Christopher Bridgman and Martin Borger, both corporate executives, were humiliated in Texas at the George Bush International Airport when they went to collect their luggage from an international flight. Their bag, which was secure before the flight, had been tampered with. Its contents, including a gigantic purple dildo, were taped to the top of the bag. Now, the bag contained a logo of the airline, and only airline personnel were allowed to handle the baggage. So people are leaning towards thinking this is not a TSA thing, but an airline baggage handlers thing. The couple is now suing the airline for invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, mental anguish, as well as negligence. They're seeking an unknown amount for damages. They were only going to be in Texas very briefly to catch a connecting flight. Now, as you know, Lewis, when you come in on an international flight, you kind of have to exit and re-enter security, including with all of that luggage. That's the point at which they noticed this. And so when asked for a comment, Daily Mail is reporting that the airline's reasoning for removing the dildo was, quote, because the airline baggage handlers realized it was in a bag that had a man's name on the luggage tag. So apparently the airline's policy is that employees have to judge what is and isn't gender appropriate for the customer's personal and private belongings. These baggage handlers now are sociologists. It's incredible.
Wow. I wonder what the requirements are to become a baggage handler.
Yeah,
I wonder if you need a degree in that field.
You need a doctorate, basically, to be a baggage handler, and you're constantly making assessments about the gender appropriateness of different items people carry.
So what's going to happen here?
I don't know. We'll see what happens with the lawsuit. It's a very strange story. We haven't really heard from United about what the situation yet.
That thing's huge. All right.
Strange stuff, Lewis. Truth is stranger than fiction.
That it is.
Let's go to your voicemails. Our voicemail line is open 24 hours a day, 219-2-DAVID-P. Here's a voicemail again. I can't figure out if this is real or a parody. If it's real, it's a very sad situation. If it's not real, then I certainly don't know what it's all about, but let's take a listen to it. Lewis, here we go.
Hello, Mr. Pakman. I'm in the middle of trying to save my dog here. He's severely dehydrated. It's really serious. What I wanted to point your attention to, or draw to your attention, if you would, it's the tragedy of the commons.
Okay, so then he goes on with a minute voicemail about the commons. If your dog is really dehydrated and you're trying to save its life, don't call me. Leaving a voicemail for me is the last concern if your dog is dehydrated and dying, unless this is some kind of strange joke or parody. I just can't tell.
I don't know. I'm lost.
Okay, and then here's another one about, another voicemail about Ann Romney. Let's take a listen to that.
Hey, David, check out Ann Romney. Her face doesn't move. She's got so much freaking Botox and Juvederm pumped into her face that it doesn't even move. The only thing that moves is her mouth. That should become, like, the conversation. In her nose, look at her nose. Her nose got smaller. That should become the conversation. It'll freak her out. You know, people start talking about all her plastic surgeries that she had and her face. It's all Botox and Juvederm.
Okay, so there you go.
I think Mitz had plenty of that too.
I don't know. Mitt does not look like a 65-year-old man, I have to tell you.
Right.
They both look very young. Maybe they've had work done. But you know what? Whether they've had plastic surgery or not has absolutely no bearing on why they're completely unqualified to be, or for why Mitt's unqualified to be the president of the United States. It has nothing to do, but interesting voicemail nonetheless.
It would be an interesting topic, though, if it were to come up in an interview with Ann Romney, right?
Yeah, I assume you would get the same reaction when they asked her about tax returns. She turns into kind of an evil witch.
Right, right.
Okay, on the Christian prayer moving the hurricane away from the RNC, looks like the people of New Orleans just didn't pray hard enough. And on We Built It, they certainly built the debt that's crippling America. Keep the voicemails coming, keep the emails coming, 219-2-DAVID-P. That does it for today. There's a bonus show, though. You can get the bonus show. Great stories, including cyborg tissue, the blocking of Warcraft in Iran, and plenty more. Is Lewis concerned about that? We'll talk to him. Check out the bonus show. Otherwise, we'll see you Monday.
David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.